What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the Country Roads Webcast. Here we are, kicking off Season 7 of the CRW podcast in style. One of our favorite episodes, the annual Season Prediction Roundtable here for the 2024 version. We're going to go through the WVU schedule game by game, come up with our season record prediction for the Mountaineers. And, of course, joining me to help me do so, as always, my two great co-hosts. We've got Steven.
What's going on, everybody?
And Bradley.
And we back.
That's right. Back at it again. And man, I always love the season prediction roundtable. One of my favorite episodes of the year because, not only does it signify a new start to the podcast season, but it tells me that the WVU football season's right around the corner as well. And we know we're set for a special 2024. We're all really excited about this year.
Yeah, it's an exciting year to be a Mountaineer, dude.
Hopefully y'all enjoy it. And with no further ado, gentlemen, let's get into it. Let's get into it with a big one. One of the most anticipated season openers in quite some time, taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions at home in Morgantown, game one of the season. Fox Big Noon kickoff, stripe the stadium game as well. Penn State bringing in new coordinators on both sides of the football. Andy Kotelnicki taking over as offensive coordinator, coming over from Kansas. New defensive coordinator Tom Allen coming over from where he was previously the head coach of Indiana. Still got James Franklin heading things up. They got a good portion of their roster back on offense and defense, as do we. I think we gave them a good run for their money last year. Of course, James Franklin had to, punch in that late touchdown to try and make it look a little bit further than it really was, something that we haven't forgotten about and something that I hope that the players and coaching staff hasn't either and we can use to maybe motivate us. But will that motivation be enough? Will the home crowd be enough, gentlemen? Let's get into it. Stephen, we'll let you lead us off here. Penn State, game one of the season. What's your prediction for this one?
I've thought about this one a lot. I've gone back and forth, and we even mentioned before we opened the show, I might even go back and forth a little bit more before the season gets started. But right now, I don't think West Virginia will be able to beat the Nittany Lions in week one, unfortunately. I would love to see it happen, and like I said, I might go back and forth between now and then. But if history proves anything, the Penn State Nittany Lions are very, very hard to beat, even in Morgantown. So, unfortunately, we're opening up 0-1 once again. Even though we finally get to open up against the Power 5 or Power 4 now at home instead of on the road or neutral site.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's a nice change after 3 straight years having to do that on the road for sure. But it's definitely going to be a tall task. So I don't blame you for picking it that way for sure. Like you said, we haven't had our luck against the Nittany Lions. 2 wins in the past 40 years, I think it is. So hopefully maybe we can make this a third. But definitely not a bad pick there. You're agreeing with Vegas. Vegas has us as a double-digit underdog at this point, so it would be a heck of an upset. Penn State's probably going to be a top 10 team going into the game, but it's not unfeasible to see us possibly pull it off. Brad, what are your thoughts? You agree with Steven, or are you going the other way?
I think it's going to come down to 2 things. I think that's going to be how do you come out? You come out swinging. You know what I mean? If the team's on the same page clicking, then I think that we got a chance to get up early. But, with so many question marks on just like pieces that haven't played that much or back from injury, or transfers, like you just don't know what you're going to get yet. But I think that if we can get off to a jump early, I think that we've got a puncher's chance. And so it's all about Neil Brown. How do you have your guys prepared? It's going to be you're in your own house on week one. And I guess I won't know until I get the rumbling in my tummies when it comes closer time to game time. But I think it's going to be a close game. I think we'll cover the spread. I think it's going to be a crazy atmosphere. To me, this is not a game that the Mountaineers win. Like, if you step up and you win this one, then you got a chance to do something special. But, we've not shown to do that yet. Neil Brown has not won a ton of big games in his career. Not necessarily his career. Since he's been at WVU, he's definitely had big wins before. But can you step up to that occasion and then be different?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good point is, season openers haven't really been the best for us here in the past few seasons. We mentioned the 3 on the road, but luckily this one's at home. So, I definitely see where you guys are coming from there on that one. And like I said earlier, it's definitely going to be a tall task. So, but
yeah.
I'm going to throw on these golden blue glasses here. We can't all 3 pick an L. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Mountaineers are going to come out and shock the nation to start this season and get this special 2024 year off right for a couple of reasons. I think that, last year they performed well on the defensive side. They really did a good job stopping Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. I think they'll be able to do that again. And this year, I think they're more equipped on the back end with a little bit better depth. And if you guys remember, last year our secondary struggled in that game, and it was kind of after that game and the Duquesne game, they made some changes and our secondary really improved, but they still didn't have that depth there. This year, they do have that depth in the back end. That accompanied by the fact of Penn State, breaking in a couple different coordinators. Obviously, Kodalnicki on the offensive side is a great coordinator, but does he have the pieces to run the same type of system that he ran at Kansas? I think it remains to be seen, and hopefully they're still working out some kinks in week one. And then as far as Penn State's offensive line is concerned, they're replacing some tackles. I think both tackles, if I'm not mistaken, left and right, and they haven't really solidified a starter there. They may even platoon and use multiple guys. West Virginia has been very strong on the defensive line up front in recent seasons, especially last year. I think that'll continue this year. And then on the other side of things, Penn State's weakness on defense seems to be kind of the middle of their run defense, and I think that could create a big game for Jaheim White and C.J. Donaldson. And the first name that I said there, Jaheim White, to me is going to be the difference in this game. Penn State didn't have to face him last year. They will this year. West Virginia gets it done at home, starts the season 1-0 with a win against a top 10 team, and we finally beat Penn State again. I'm giving us the W, boys.
I do want to say that I think it'll be a close game, either way that it goes.
Save these for later, maybe. Might need them again.
Like I said, it's all going to come out how you start. It's all
you'll like what's coming, though. You'll like what's coming.
I like it, boys. I like it. Hey, one of us had to take that leap and try and go out there on a limb. And, but as Steven said, now when we get to the Penn State preview and prediction show, and I got more time to dive into the Nittany Lions and the Mountaineers matchups more specifically, my opinion may change. But for now, I'm keeping it, the golden blue glasses on, being optimistic and going with the win. So 1-0 for me, 0-1 for Steven, 0-1 for Brad at this point.
One thing that you mentioned, that was one thing that we struggled with earlier in that game last year was, getting our secondary figured out, and they just torched us on the back end. I rewatched that game, a couple of days ago, and we could not get it figured out. And by the third quarter, it was over. We had times we had shots in that game to make it a better football game, but I'm afraid. Now, I will say, I think that we are going to be very good on defense this year. But I'm afraid that it's just not going to be figured out with the amount of transfers on the back end that we've got. That's my fear going into the game. But like I said, I really could change that thought going in, just like you said before too.
It's like if we can find two solid cornerbacks that can make it the whole year, we got a chance to be like. Yeah, like that would really make you feel good. You get three, like you're like, oh my god, like Jacoby Spells comes back from injury, he's can like.
I think
really put together a special third.
You have a legitimate shot. We're going to get into this as we get through the show, but I mean, like you have a legitimate shot, fellas, like to have not only the three, but maybe even four guys just at cornerback, and then maybe even 2 to 3 guys in your at the safety position between those positions. And that's not even talking about the linebackers yet, which I'm extremely excited for.
Me too. I think the linebacking core is really going to surprise some people. And, Brad, you mentioned Jacoby Spells. And to me, that's one of the big things that has me, kind of excited about that secondary is because I thought he was going to be out a little bit longer than it seems like he's going to be. And he's apparently been making plays still, despite the fact he's got the non-contact injury on here in fall camp. So I think that we're going to have.
He's had some special plays, He's been a special player and maybe not consistent, but, who's to say he's not the Garrett Greene of the defense? He sat over there for 3 years and just finally it's clicking for him because things are gotten better.
And he's not even the one I'm most excited about.
I know. That's what I was about to say. I've got, I think, really 4, maybe even 5 guys at corner that I think is going to be really good. So I think we're going to have depth at those 2 spots. I really do. As long as, knock on wood, we're recording this probably about a week ahead of the time that you guys will hear it or watch it. So hopefully by that time, everything's still going good. No other injuries have occurred in fall camp. But if we can stay healthy, I think we've got depth on the defense like we haven't had in the Neil Brown era. So we'll see what happens. Like Steven said, there's a good point. We'll see how long it takes us to gel with some of the transfers and stuff. But I like our chances, and it sounds like you guys do too, and we're going to give Penn State a hell of a fight either way that it turns out. So that's our predictions here thus far. on the season prediction roundtable. Next up, Albany. Obviously, I'm going with the W here, guys. Anybody got anything different here?
Dub.
W.
That's an easy one. All right, so we'll move on now to the backyard brawl on the road this time, heading back to Pittsburgh. Obviously, they got the win at home. We got the win in Morgantown. Now somebody needs to get this rubber match. Hopefully, somebody can finally get a win on the road with the Mountaineers pulling it off this time. Brad, we'll let you lead this one off. What's your thoughts here on the backyard brawl in 2024 as we head back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and if you've watched this before, I like to get a good little story going. So I feel like we lose against Penn State because our wide receivers just haven't made that step yet. I think that's where our offense struggles at. And so, like, you come out against Albany, you let them get a little hot, you let them play a little pitch and catch, you let them, you let CJ Donaldson touch the ball 3 times and he gets 2 touchdowns, just things like that happen. And then you step up against Pitt, you go into their house, you take over their house because it's not even going to be close. I think Pitt said that they're not even going to be selling to the public because they're scared. Pitt's just over there crying. They know what's about to happen. We're about to walk in with a well-tuned, what could be a well-oiled, fine-tuned machine at this point that's ready to, like, see what they can do. And they only got to do it 45 minutes from home. They only got to go right there and do it. Oh, boy, that's a warm-up routine for what's about to happen to them when they come up against their next, 5 opponents. So, yeah. Domination.
I like it. I think that I'm right there with you, really. I think that West Virginia has a great chance to, probably make this the first time in this, renewal of the series that one team kind of dominates. I mean, you could argue that we dominated last year, but, the scoreboard, not so much, despite the fact that we controlled the game the entire time. I think that this time we go into Pittsburgh, and we really show them what we're about. They haven't had to deal with Garrett Greene yet. They're going to have to do that. I don't know if they'll be able to defend him. They got a new offensive coordinator coming in as well. We'll see how long it takes him to gel, especially playing them here early in the season. They're going to have a lot of new pieces there on that offensive side in general. And I think that West Virginia is just going to be too much for Pitt to handle this year. So I got West Virginia winning this one probably by 10 to 14 points personally. So I'm right there with you. Stephen, what about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you guys. I think that, going into the Albany game, with the loss to Penn State, in my mind, I think that it only comes with a lot of positives going forward throughout the season. I think that we go into that Albany game, and I think that it's one of the few times that we're going to be able to rout a team like that and not give up very many points. I think that they don't give up 3, maybe they might give up 7 points, if that. Because I think that's where the defense starts to find themselves, and I think that leads in, like Brad said, back to into the backyard brawl. And I think this is going to be. I don't think it's going to be even a 10-point game. I think West Virginia might even score over 50 points on the Pitt Panthers. They have a lot of question marks, and I also feel like the administration at Pitt is kind of shooting themselves in the foot with the way that they're trying to derive this atmosphere. Because they're not allowing for a single game ticket, so you have to purchase essentially a mini season ticket package to be able to go to this game, which I don't believe a large majority of people are going to do. So I think that's going to hinder the atmosphere a little bit. And with that Pitt team not being expected to do very much, I don't see Pitt bringing their A game as much as they did the first time we played up there.
Could you imagine if we rushed Pitt Stadium? How funny that would be.
Well, if they're not letting our fans in there and we start blowing them out, there's not going to be anybody left in the stadium once their fans start clearing out of there, all 5 of them.
If I'm not mistaken, is this the last time we're playing for a few years? I know we're supposed to play them back again.
I can't remember if it's. I think we might play them one more year, and then there's the break, or this could be the last one. It's either the last or next to last. So yeah, definitely not too many chances left. Probably the last. I know it's the last time we'll go there for a while. So
I know they've talked about keeping it going, which they absolutely need to.
Yeah, I think it starts back up in 2028 or 2029.
Yeah,
so I think 2 years break.
I think West Virginia routs them this year.
I love it. I'd love to see us go out there and put on a good performance out there at Pittsburgh, and I think that it's a good thing to see us all in agreement that the Mountaineers will put on a good performance. But speaking of putting on a good performance, if you want to be on your best performance as well, like the Mountaineers will be when they go play at Pittsburgh. One of the best ways that I can suggest for you to do that is by using Magic Mind, the little mental performance shot, guys. I've been drinking it again, for a few days now, and you guys know that they were with us previously as a sponsor, and didn't realize how much I missed the product till it came back around again. Guys know that I love my coffee. You guys know that watch the show, listen to the show, always got my coffee with me, and that's one of the best things that I like about it is that it gives you mental clarity, helps you with focus, but it's not a coffee replacement either. It actually helps your caffeine last you longer throughout the day, so it's something that I can't recommend enough. It's approved by doctors. It has lion's mane mushroom in it, the highest grade matcha possible. It's really just an absolutely excellent product, and here at the Country Roads Webcast, we've been lucky enough to partner up with them again, and where we can give you guys a discount on this Magic Mind product, whether you want to try it for one time or whether you want to get a subscription. You can do that by heading to our special link. I'll put it in the video description and in the show notes if you check it out on the audio side, but it's magicmind.com/countrylt, where you can get up to 50% off nearly on a one-time purchase. It's 48% off, or you can get 20% off of the subscription there by using the code CountryLT20 at checkout. So I can't recommend it enough, guys. Be sure, check out your Magic Mind, give yourself a boost. That way you can put on your best performance, just like the Mountaineers are hoping to do here in 2024. Having said that, the Mountaineers coming back home then, and this is when things start to get serious because that's when Big 12 play starts as they welcome in the Kansas Jayhawks. We know last time Kansas came into Morgantown, it wasn't that pretty of a sight for the Mountaineers. They really, couldn't get a stop in that game. Since then, that offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, has moved on to Penn State, as we discussed a little bit earlier. Kansas is bringing in Jeff Grimes, previously from Baylor, to replace him as offensive coordinator. But they have a lot of pieces returning on that offense. Devin Neal, one of the best running backs in the country. They've got Daniel Highshaw in that backfield. And, of course, you can't forget Jalen Daniels, returning from injury after sitting out last season. Kansas picked up near the top of the conference. I think that this is going to be an interesting battle. And, we were talking a little bit before we started recording. This could be one of the games where West Virginia breaks out those Coal Rush uniforms. It seems like this game or the next home game against Iowa State are the two games that the Mountaineers are possibly looking at. But it's going to be interesting to see how this one pans out. Steven, how are you feeling about the matchup with the Jayhawks here?
I like our chances, and I think West Virginia owes the Jayhawks one for the last time that they were in Morgantown with that night game, and they shocked us. And they went on to have a really good season, but I think that's in the back of a lot of players' minds. There's a lot of people, players that are still on the roster that were on that team also. So I expect West Virginia to win this game.
I like that. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and follow you up because I'm in agreement with you, man. I think that West Virginia is going to be ready this time. One thing that this coaching staff has done, that Neil Brown has done, is that they've found ways to, motivate this team throughout last season. They're going to find ways to do it again this year. And I think, looking at the last time that you welcomed Kansas into Morgantown, you need no more motivation than that. And also the fact that, you listen to Big 12 shows, you listen to people talk about the Big 12 conference. Kansas is one of the teams that's consistently being brought up as an underdog for this conference and not WVU. People are talking about Kansas's offense. They're talking about Kansas's backfield. So I think, C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White, Garrett Greene are going to be out to prove, hey, we're better than, Daniels, Neal, and Highshaw. And I think West Virginia has enough pieces to be able to get the win. And I'm not sold on the Kansas defense yet. And, also not sold on the non-injury proneness, I guess you could say, if that's a word, of Jalen Daniels. He seems to get banged up a lot. So, this is early enough in the season. He should still be around, but you never know what could happen there. And I think, Lance Leipold's done a fantastic job at Kansas. I think they've got a good chance to have a really good year, but I think in Morgantown, they're going to suffer a loss. So I got West Virginia winning that one as well. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, I think, like I said, after beating up on Pitt a little bit, I think this is West Virginia's real first test after Penn State. I think we look good against Penn State, make it competitive. So there's a little bit more hype going into this game. Might be the night game, might be the Coal Rush game, I'm thinking, right? I think Kansas comes out and punches us in the mouth a little bit. I'm going to even say we come from behind. I think that we beat Kansas. I think that they kind of come out and test us for the first time for a little bit, but I think that once we get our wheels under us, I think that this is going to be a win. It's kind of be our first statement game of okay, let's see what we can do in the Big 12.
And that'd be a great way to start it off too. First conference game against another team that's believed to be a competitor. Come out and get the win. Start off 1-0 in conference play, and that's what we all have happening right here. Just a quick update as we're now a third of a way through the schedule. I've got the Mountaineers 4-0, 1-0 in the Big 12. Brad has us 3-1, 1-0 in the Big 12, and same for Steven, 3-1 and 1-0 in the Big 12. Following that game, West Virginia will have their first bye week of the season, get a little rest before they get to head off on the road, go to Stillwater, take on an Oklahoma State team that's also a team that's, favored in the top half of the conference. West Virginia's first few conference games here are all against teams that are highly regarded in the Big 12 this year, so West Virginia has a chance to prove themselves right away. We think that they'll do it against Kansas. We were talking revenge for that game. West Virginia definitely could have revenge on their mind against Oklahoma State as well after, the final quarter and a half of last year's game. Things really fell apart after it looked like West Virginia was in the driver's seat heading into the fourth quarter of that game, and then it became the Ollie Gordon show. Ollie Gordon is back. Alan Bowman is back. And of course, I think one of the X factors in this game, though, is former Oklahoma State receiver Jaden Bray playing for the Mountaineers. He'd probably like to get the best of his old team. But going on the road to Stillwater, very tough place to play. Mike Gundy, always a good coach that does a great job there with the Cowboys. Bradley, tough contest here, tough road contest. West Virginia has plenty of home contests on this 2024 slate, but some of the road contests they have, especially in conference, seem like they're going to be tall tasks. This may be one of them. How are you feeling about this game against Oklahoma State?
Yeah, this is one of those games that I think tells you a lot about Neil Brown and the trajectory of our program. Because when you look at it, like you're going into a really hostile environment, you got a chance to do something special. You got momentum. You got to seize it, right? You got to show consistency. It's got to be one of those games where you come in and you got to be different. So I don't know if I see it yet. I think Oklahoma State's going to be a good team. I think you can't count Mike Gundy out, especially you're going to be at Oklahoma State. I hope that we're prepared for that game, and I think that'll be the game. If we win it, it'll tell me that like we're ready to make that step. But I just don't think that's a game that we can step up and win yet. So I'm gonna take that as an L.
I don't blame you there. It's like I said, going into Stillwater is always a tall task. They got those sidelines, or the fans are right up on the sidelines, I should say, there in that stadium, and they got those paddles going crazy. You can hear them talking to the players, can hear them talking to them. They can hear everything they're saying about them. It's a hostile environment for sure, and they've got plenty of pieces. There's a reason they're predicted to be a contender. So
yeah, and if I'm not wrong, like Neil Brown's also not too hot off of bye weeks either. So.
That's a good point. And I went back and forth on this one myself. But I think, having the bye week, I think it comes at a good time because I think you're going to be locked in probably a tight game, a hard-fought game against Kansas. I think you're going to need that bye week to just get right physically and mentally. And, hopefully, like you said, Neil Brown hasn't done the best off of bye weeks traditionally, but I think one thing he's been talking about throughout this offseason is trying to improve in areas where he struggled. He mentioned that, with the opener against Penn State, how they've struggled in openers recently. They're changing some things up to try and fix that. So I'm sure that hopefully it's something else he has circled here is trying to get better. Coming off a bye week, and, with the bye week there in front of this one was one of the reasons that I ultimately landed on, I think West Virginia is going to go into Stillwater and win this football game. I think that, like I said, there's some tough road contests here in the Big 12. This is right at the top of the list. But I think if you want to prove yourself as a contender, you not only have to get the big win against the contender at home in Kansas, but you got to be able to do it on the road. And then that's when you're really going to open some eyes. I think that West Virginia's defense will be, obviously selling out to kind of stop the run. And if they're able to do that and at least contain Ollie Gordon a little bit, I don't feel like Alan Bowman's good enough to beat you on his own, especially with the secondary probably really gelling at this point with, some of the transfers and the pieces that we were talking about earlier. So I think West Virginia goes into Stillwater, and I think they pull off, what would be for the nation another shocker. And I got West Virginia winning this one. And don't look now, boys, but I got us 5-0 and 2-0 at this point. But
what are we ranked? Wait. I gotta know. What are we ranked at that point, Jordan?
Well, I mean, if we beat Penn State and then Kansas and Oklahoma State, we're at least in the top 15. We may be close to the top 10 at that point. So, we're off to a hot start. We're off to a hot start for sure in the way I've got it playing out. Hopefully, like I said, super optimistic take here through 5 games, but we'll see if that holds up in the back half of the schedule. So Brad got us losing in Stillwater. I got us picking up a tough road win. Steven, where do you fall on this one?
I wish I could agree with you, but unfortunately, I think the West Virginia is going to go. They've struggled in Stillwater. I know that they've went out in there. They've played well earlier on when we joined the Big 12 conference, but as of lately, they really haven't played well on the road, and especially out there in Stillwater. So I think this is one game that West Virginia struggles to find their footing. From what I can understand from the pregame shows, that from Oklahoma State, they did lose Jaden Bray. We did get him from the transfer portal from them, but from what I can understand, they replaced those receivers the same way that we replaced our cornerbacks, essentially. So they're very excited about their offensive talent that they have coming back and the ones that they have coming in. And playing in a place like that, I truly believe that Mike Gundy only has at max 5 seasons left of football coaching left in him, from the way that people talk about him. So with the trajectory of the way that the conference going, I do believe the West Virginia is in a great spot to be that contender that contends every single year for the conference championship. But truthfully speaking, I think the number one team to do that, other than West Virginia, would probably be the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I mean, they have a veteran coach, they have a veteran team on all phases of the football. Them and Kansas State, I truly believe, are going to be the top 2 contenders, other than West Virginia this year, contender for that Big 12 championship. And I mean, this is a gauntlet, and I mean a gauntlet of an October schedule for West Virginia. But unfortunately, I think West Virginia is going to lose this game. But I think you'll like what I have later on as a little spoiler alert.
All right. I like it. I like it because I can't, say either one of you guys are wrong because I think, already the stuff I said about, being a tough place to play. And I definitely agree with your comment there, Stephen. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, both going to be in the very top of this conference. I agree with that as well. I think they're both going to be very talented. But,
And we get a chance to play both. Notice I didn't say another team that we don't get to play, or 2 other teams that start with a U or a C.
I think that I get where you're coming from there for sure, and I'm right there in that same boat with you. I probably should have thrown the gold and blue glasses back on for that one because I definitely was wearing some gold and blue colored glasses with that pick. But after West Virginia plays Oklahoma State, they come back home, and it's Iowa State Cyclones coming into Morgantown. We mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Kansas game, this is another one that has the possibility of being that coal rush game. If it's not Kansas, it will probably be this matchup against Iowa State. And as we mentioned, they've hit us with the blackout before previously, so wouldn't be a bad choice to do it as well. So Saturday, October 12th, welcoming Iowa State into Morgantown. Iowa State breaking in a new offensive coordinator, but other than that, they return a ton of pieces on both sides of the football. Rocco Becht really had a strong debut as a freshman. He's going to be more seasoned now. Obviously, he's got the WVU connection, being the son of Anthony Becht. They have a really talented running back of their own that was a freshman last year in Ibu Sama. I think that they've got a chance to be, they're probably flying a little bit under the radar. That's kind of the way I see Iowa State, and when they fly under the radar, that's kind of typically when they do some damage. So we'll see what happens. But, one thing about West Virginia is I feel like I try and have to do this every year because, being the Mountaineer fans as long as we have, one thing that we usually see is West Virginia kind of winning a game they shouldn't win. And then there's always kind of a loss coming that you don't see coming. So, in the previous pick here against Oklahoma State, for me, that was kind of West Virginia winning the game that maybe they shouldn't win in Stillwater against an experienced team. Like I said, going to be the top half of the conference. And unfortunately, I see this one as a potential trap game. You're coming off the big win at Oklahoma State. You got homecoming against Kansas State the next week after this game. And Iowa State seems to be a team that sometimes can have our number, especially when we're riding high. You guys remember, was it 2018? We were up to, top 10 in the country, then had to go play at Iowa State, and they really kind of humbled us. And you guys, like I said, we were 5-0. The way I have things at this point, we're nearing that top 10 again. And sometimes, unfortunately, history repeats itself. And I've got West Virginia taking this L here to Iowa State. Unfortunately, that's where I'm going to go with this one. But what about you, Brad? How you feeling about this matchup against the Cyclones?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be the funnest game to watch all year. Like, if you're a Mountaineer fan, like, this is probably the funnest game to go to. It's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be some fun football. 2 really good football teams in prime time, hopefully just going at it. But I think being at home, I think that Neil Brown's going to have everybody bumping. I think that we come out with a win. I'm definitely going to take the W.
I like it. I like it. A little bit more optimistic than me on that pick for sure. But I had to come back down to earth at some point, I guess. So, Steven, we're split again. I got the L. Brad has the W. Who are you going to agree with this time?
It's funny that you mentioned the reason for one of the reasons, I guess, for the lost cruises because when West Virginia gets up there, up towards that top 10 threshold or in that era of the rankings, they always seem to fold at some time or another. And that's where I believe that on my prediction where the Penn State loss is going to come into play and the Oklahoma State loss is going to come into play. I think this is where West Virginia begins to find themselves as a team as a whole, and this is one of the first games that they begin to play a complete game as a whole, as a football team on the schedule. So I think West Virginia, it might be, with 7 to 10 point game. I think, like Brad said, it might be one of the funnest games to watch all year, just because of all of the storylines involved with Rocco Beck coming back home to play. I would imagine that he's going to try his butt off to beat West Virginia, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think West Virginia starts a winning streak with this Iowa State game, and I think they get the job in Morgantown, or get the job done in Morgantown, I should say.
I can dig it. Hopefully you guys are right on this one and I'm wrong on this pick, kind of flipping the way things were earlier in the predictions here for that Penn State game. So halfway through the schedule now. Just an update for you guys. Bradley has us 4-2, 2-1. Steven, same 4-2, 2-1 at this point, and I have us currently 5-1 and 2-1 in the Big 12. So all feeling pretty good here through the first 6 games. Like we said, brutal start to the conference stretch here for West Virginia, playing a lot of the top teams in the conference. And unfortunately, in the next game we're going to pick here, things don't get any easier as West Virginia comes back to Morgantown, or I guess they're staying in Morgantown rather. But it's the homecoming game against Kansas State, who, as Steven mentioned there when we were talking about the Oklahoma State game, one of the teams that I agree is going to be in the top part of this conference. They keep the same head coach and defensive coordinator. They're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, someone that we're familiar with, in Matt Wells, former Texas Tech head coach, and then was the Utah State head coach last season as well. So definitely has some experience there with offenses, and they have some talent there on that offensive side. We know about DJ Giddens at running back. We know about Dylan Edwards coming over from Colorado. And, of course, can't forget Avery Johnson, a quarterback with 4.3 speed. So really, to me, the makeup of their backfield is kind of similar to West Virginia's. 2 really good running backs, a quarterback that can beat you with his legs or possibly even his arm as well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup. And probably to me, you guys were talking about the Iowa State game being one of the most fun to watch of the season. I don't disagree with that, but I think this Kansas State game is going to be right up there with it as well. I think this is going to be a back and forth battle that I could see being, decided by 3 points or less. But I think the homecoming crowd in Morgantown, I think it's hopefully going to give West Virginia a little bit of advantage. And I think West Virginia is going to find a way to win this one. I've got us beating Kansas State at home in this tough football game. Steven, what say you, my friend?
I absolutely, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the crowd is going to be the deciding factor in this football game. I think it's going to be back and forth the entire time. I think this game is going to remind me a lot of the first time that West Virginia was able to beat Kansas State. When Shelton Gibson made that catch whenever his helmet came off,
Getting his head ripped off. Yeah.
that place was electrifying, I remember. So I think there's going to be shades of that type of atmosphere in this game. And I think West Virginia pulls it out once again.
Beautiful. Beautiful stuff there. Brad, how you feeling about this one? Kansas State, tough opponent, but it's homecoming in Morgantown. What are you thinking?
Yeah, let's just take it 3 for 3. You know what I mean? He knows it's a big game coming up. Probably up to this point, we're going to say it's the biggest game of his career. He's going 4-2. Are you going to go 4-3, Neil Brown? Or are you going to go 5-2? Like, what are you going to step up and do here? It's homecoming. He gets his guys. He gets them right. He makes them go out there and have fun. And I think that we step up and we beat a really damn good football team. And I think that that's when people say, okay. And I think that that's when people start to get scared of Neil Brown.
That's right. They start to think that these Mountaineers are for real, and they were a little bit underrated heading into the season. I think that we're to that point after this game if we can pull off this win
And
against Kansas State.
Morgantown is looking tough. Morgantown is looking like a hard place to
Oh,
play.
going to be raucous at that point. But I love the optimism. All three of us picking that one as a win. I think that that's good to see the optimism there for that game because, as we said, Kansas State to me, right there in the top of the conference here, and of course we'll see. We'll talk a little bit about that once we get through the schedule. We're going to talk about some Big 12 predictions, some season stat predictions, and some superlatives just to tease you guys up for that a little bit that are listening or watching to the episode. But then after that game, West Virginia does get back on the road and they head out to face one of the new Big 12 teams, coming over from the Pac 12 as they head out all the way to Arizona out there on the West Coast and play a game that hopefully it doesn't start at like 10:30 Eastern time, but we'll see how that ends up panning out. Arizona, some really good weapons. Fafita at quarterback, T-Mac at wide receiver, who I think is one of the best receivers in the country. He's right there at the top of the list for me. They are bringing in new coordinators, both offensive and defensive, with the new offensive coordinator being Dino Babers, the former Syracuse head coach. So, interesting. But the thing is, where this has at in the schedule, I think that they'll probably have some time to gel by then. When you're looking at these new teams coming in, you wonder how long it'll take them to adjust. And I would like it a little bit better if we were playing, Arizona a little bit earlier in their Big 12 slate. But nonetheless, we'll get them here on October 26th and head on the road to play them. Steven, how are you feeling about this game against the Arizona Wildcats?
This I know this is a team that a lot of people have as a contender for the Big 12 championship, but you just mentioned a lot of the things that I think I find as the biggest question marks. They replaced both coordinators, and they're joining a new conference. This is the same question marks that I have for a few other teams in our conference. So I think West Virginia is going to go out there. It's going to be a tough atmosphere, possibly, but with the way that I actually think Arizona is going to do, I think that I don't think that they're going to have nearly as good of a season as a lot of people think they are. That I think they might have a good quarterback and a good receiver, but from what I've seen, they have a lot of pieces on defense to replace, and with two new coordinators with two new schemes that you have to put in place, that is extremely hard to do. Let alone joining a new conference with a whole new slate of opponents that you have to prepare for. And with what feel like West Virginia has in place and the depth that we have in place, I think that we can go on the road and we beat the Wildcats. So I got West Virginia winning.
I like that. I like that pick. Brad, how are you feeling about this? When you in agreement there, or you got something different?
I think that we walk in there, it's WVU in the desert. Maybe, like you said, a late game. Can you get your team awake? I think Neil Brown gets his team going. I think if you just walk in there and you play football, I think you win. If you go in there and you execute your game plan, I think that it's a team that we could probably match up better with. So if you could just go in and function, man, just go in and play some football. Don't get caught off guard. You know, don't overlook who you're playing.
All right. I like it. I'm picking up what you guys are putting down. However, the way that I'm looking at this slate of the schedule, I had us going on the road to Stillwater, getting a tough win earlier here in my predictions. And I think when you look at the schedule here this season, especially when you're looking at the Big 12 portion of it, you have to defend your home field. If you can win, your home games, you're in good shape. But then you have these two road games, which I think are the two toughest road games, in conference and, arguably on the entire schedule all season, the Oklahoma State game and the Arizona game. I think you need to at least split those. If you can win both of them, then you're really talking about something special. And I went back and forth on which one I was going to pick as a win and which one I was going to pick as a loss because I think it's going to be tough to win both. But ultimately, as I kind of teased it up there, I got West Virginia losing here on the road. I just think, first time going all the way out to Arizona in a long time. And, it's going to be a tough trip to make, obviously. Who knows if we are having that late kick where it is, 10:30 Eastern time or something. Obviously, they'll be out there on the Pacific time by that point, but you got a little jet lag. Also, you haven't faced these players yet. you're obviously going to be scouted up on Fafita and T-Mac at wide receiver, but they have some other weapons there on the offensive side. And I think just where it's at in the schedule is what kind of led me to pick this one as the loss, like I kind of teased a little bit earlier. I think by this time they'll kind of realize how the Big 12 plays. They'll be acclimated to it, same with their new coordinators and new schemes that they have there. So unfortunately, I've got West Virginia falling in Arizona, taking a loss here. And this is kind of how I see it now. But hopefully, by the time the game rolls around, maybe I'll be able to change my opinion. But for now, I'm the pessimistic one here again, unfortunately.
Yeah, a little homecoming for Nico Markio. Maybe we should just play him. I
Yeah,
bet he's good in the desert.
Good point. He's used to that. He's used
No
to
ill
that.
wishes on Garrett Greene, but I mean it's highly possible. And I mean that's what gives me so much confidence about this football team this year is the depth at really every position. You know, you can't really point at any position. I mean, I guess you could say the defensive line is lacking depth, but that can be filled with the amount of linebacker depth that we've got. But you know, we've got solid quarterback play, solid running back play, solid wide receiver play, solid offensive line play. This team is deep, and that's gonna matter down the stretch of the season, especially in that portion of the season.
Absolutely, because now you're getting into the nitty gritty part of the schedule. That's the final October game. West Virginia will then have their next bye week of the season following that game, and then they'll hit back on the road. The only time on this 2024 schedule that they play back-to-back road games. Luckily, there's a bye week in between, so I do like the way the schedule sets up in that sense, as you don't really have any back-to-back road games, and when you do, you have the bye week in between. That should be good, and of course, it's a good time to have it again, I think, especially after you're going all the way out there to the West Coast and possibly playing in a close football game. But after that bye week, then you get into November. And this is when you have to win football games if you want to be a contender in the conference. You want to be playing important games in November. And judging by the way we all have them picked, these are going to be important games here in November, starting with the November 9th contest on the road at Cincinnati. Bradley, we'll let you lead it off this time. How you feeling about the matchup with the Bearcats?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be tough. I think Cincinnati's going to be rowdy. I think that they're going to be fun again. But like I said, I think that Neil Brown's got everybody working really well at this moment. I think that the team is gelled. I think that we're rolling. So I think that we're a better football team than Cincinnati. So I think that we can walk in there and get a W. I think it shows that Neil Brown can get it done on the road 2 times in a row now.
I like the way you're feeling on that one. I think, Cincinnati, they're a bit of a mystery to me this year of how they're going to shake out. I think that they took some lumps last year, but I think they also learned a lot about themselves and what they need to do to improve. Obviously, playing at home, they're going to have a little bit of an advantage in that aspect. But this is also a team that, West Virginia and Cincinnati, very familiar with each other from their Big East days. It's going to be nice to have, a road game actually in the same time zone for once. That's, a plus on West Virginia's side, especially after, a couple weeks before they'll have to travel all the way out across the country to play Arizona. So they'll probably be a little bit more comfortable playing in Ohio. And, as Brad kind of stated there, I think West Virginia just has too many pieces where Cincinnati's still kind of adjusting, still kind of getting used to this conference. Stranger things have happened. They could, this could be the game where, that unexpected loss comes. But I think that West Virginia wins this one and probably wins it going away at this point if they're, performing the way that I think they will be here in the season, especially when they realize, oh, it's November, it's time, it's gut check time. We want to get to our goal of a Big 12 championship. We got to start winning these football games. So I think that West Virginia locks in and handles Cincinnati here on the road. Steven, what about you?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this just because it is an old Big East matchup. And, it's the first time we've gotten to play them at in Cincinnati. I know that we used to struggle there pretty often when we play them up there back in the day, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think the West Virginia goes up there and handles business. It might be a rowdy environment early on, but I think West Virginia silences them because I think West Virginia's offense is going to be explosive this year. Uh, there may be times that they sputter a little bit, but I think whenever they get hot, I think West Virginia's offense is going to be able to hang 30 to 40 points on you at any given time with the way that we're going to be able to operate on both the running game and the passing game. And I don't expect the offensive line to take a step back at all. So, and also Jared Bartlett's playing in Cincinnati, so that gives us a little bit of a reason to
True.
give it to him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Funny enough, guys, 3 games left on the schedule. We all had different ways of getting there, but at this point, we all have the exact same record and conference record. All 3 of us currently have the Mountaineers at 7-2, 4-2 in the Big 12 conference. 3 games left to go here. The next one, back at home, November 16th, West Virginia welcomes in the Baylor Bears for Military Appreciation / Mountaineer Week. And do you guys know who Baylor's new offensive coordinator is this year, by the way?
To Jake Spavital.
Jake Spavital, yeah. Interesting.
Wow.
I completely forgot about that until I was, kind of
I
looking,
did
trying
not
to
know
take some
that.
notes
I
here.
didn't know that at all.
Yeah, it's funny enough, so he'll be coming back into Morgantown for that game, a place that he's familiar with, and of course, most recently he was the offensive coordinator at Cal. But that's a guy that does know offense, and they are bringing in Toledo transfer quarterback DeQuan Finn, who's been getting rave reviews throughout their camps. So we'll see if that helps boost their offense after they kind of took a step back. Dave Aranda also taking over, as the kind of defensive coordinator as well. He'll be calling the defense for him in addition to being the head coach, and he's kind of in a similar spot to what Neil Brown was last year, kind of, more or less coaching for his job this season. He's a little bit on the hot seat, and in doing so, he's decided to do what he knows best, which for him, it's defense. So he's taken over the defensive play call in there, and we'll see how it shakes out for them. They definitely added some pieces to try and improve. I think they'll be better than they were last season. But like I said, at this point in the season, I think West Virginia is going to be hitting on all cylinders. As Stephen mentioned, we're going to have a really explosive offense. So even if Jake Spavital does kind of transform Baylor and they're kind of clicking there, I think West Virginia has the horses to outscore them, even if this game does get into a shootout or something like that. And I think that West Virginia, Military Appreciation, back in Morgantown, November 16th. I think they'll get another win here. I've got them beating the Baylor Bears, and what could be a close football game, but I think West Virginia finds a way to pull away at the end, make the right plays when it matters, because I got trust in Garrett Greene, especially at this point in the season once our offense is really gelling. So I got another W here for West Virginia. What about you, Stephen?
I actually think that West Virginia. I think that Baylor is going to be a pretty bad football team this year. There's not a lot of people that think that Dave Aranda is going to make it past week 4 this football season, without about of a job that he's done, and with the way that the administration is at Baylor, it's very likely to be the case. So even if that doesn't happen, I don't expect them to do very much in the Big 12 conference this year. Baylor's just one of those teams that there's really no in between with them. They're either really really good or they're really really bad, and I think this is going to be one of those years that they're really really bad, and I think West Virginia routs them in Morgantown this year. So I don't even think it'll be close.
Hey, I like it. And I can definitely see what you're saying about Aranda. His seat's certainly
Don't look
hot.
now, but West Virginia will be on a 5-game winning streak.
You do, yeah, I see that. You do got the 5-game winning streak now at this point. So I like the fact that you've got them hitting their stride late in the season when it really matters. That's
Yes,
good.
sir.
That's good prediction, my friend. Good prediction. So definitely me and Steven both got this one as a W for the Mountaineers. Bradley, what about you? Are we gonna make it 3 for 3?
See, I do think it's a scary game because you got a Baylor team that's really got nothing to lose, but also are they going to go out there and play like they got anything to win? You can really get caught up that, you know what I mean, like not paying attention. Get a team that catches a spark on a cold day in November. You never know what could happen. But no, I think that we've got a sound football team. I think that Neil Brown shows that he's going to be a great coach, and that's what I want for him. I want him to show that he can kind of handle those situations, and really just close out the games that you have no business even letting them be a game.
3 for 3 on that one, all picking a W for the Mountaineers again there. So in agreement, here as we get later in the schedule, it seems like we're all kind of thinking on the same page more so here than we were at the beginning of the season. And we all have the Mountaineers having great success at this point, and hopefully things follow suit in real life and that comes to fruition when we get to this point in the season. And speaking of that, West Virginia then would play their final home game the next week. They would welcome in UCF for the True Blue game, which of course also will be Senior Day. UCF, I think, another team that's really flying a little under the radar, if you ask me. Gus Malzahn, if he knows anything, he knows offense, and they're going to be good on that side of the football. They've also brought in KJ Jefferson, which, really kind of a prototypical Gus Malzahn quarterback, I guess you could say. They have R.J. Harvey back at running back. They have Richardson back at running back, bring back several good receivers. They are going to have a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, something that we've said for multiple Big 12 teams here, but I think UCF's going to be a good football team, and I think that this will be an interesting matchup. Much like last year's game was, it got really exciting there in the second half, a lot of back and forth scoring. I think this one could be the case again, but I think, senior day, obviously you're going to want to send those guys out right. Wyatt Milam, Garrett Greene, Sean Martin on down the list. Aubrey Burks, all of those guys, I think they'll really want to show out on senior day. And I think that that'll give you the boost that you need. That accompanied with the fact that you're at this point in the season, you're looking, we got 2 regular season games left. We're in the thick of a Big 12 championship race. We got a chance to make it to Jerry World and potentially play for a Big 12 championship. That's going to be all the motivation these guys need. I got West Virginia getting the win over UCF, but in a game that I do believe could end up being a shootout. I see it going one of two ways. It's either going to be a shootout that West Virginia makes enough plays out to win at the end, or West Virginia comes into this game super motivated and kind of handles them, in double digits, fashion with a kind of easier victory there. I think it's going to be one or the two, no in between personally at this point with the way that I've got the season going. But Stephen, how are you feeling about this game against UCF?
I think this one has potential to, like you said, be one of the funner games to watch on the schedule. A really back and forth. I think that their offense has a chance to be just as explosive as ours. But I think it'll be possibly a 3-point game at the very end of it, but I think West Virginia pulls this one out. I think being in Morgantown this year is going to pay a major advantage for West Virginia, and especially if they get to that point in the season, you're looking at potentially being the Big 12 champions. So I expect West Virginia to be rocking and at that point. So I think they can go in there and beat the Knights.
I love it. And you're absolutely right about that. Morgantown is going to be a madhouse at this point if the season's going the way that we've got it going here on our record predictions. And, it's just one of those seasons where you kind of got that feeling going into it that this going to be a special year and should be a special year. But Bradley, does that special year continue for you with this senior day matchup against UCF?
Yeah, I'm gonna say heartbreaker. I think that just the moment gets too big. I feel like you said earlier, Jordan, WVU always seems to win one they shouldn't, lose one they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that this is when it comes. I feel like it's just like on a senior day, which I feel like has always been spotty for us, at least like for a couple of years there. And so it's just like, I don't know, one of those ones where I feel like we kind of just get big eyed and kind of forget what we're doing. And I think UCF's going to be a spunky team there at the end of the year, especially when they start gelling some. Especially if they get an identity. If they don't get it together, then, we're walking into that game feeling really good. But, Gus Malzahn's got them really, really having fun playing football, then, that's a team that you can get caught not paying attention to.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught off guard on that one because, like I said, Gus Malzahn, he knows offense. They're going to bring their A game on that side of the football. And, if you're not ready, you're definitely going to be in for a battle and maybe not turn out the way that you want. So, that's definitely a good point there, Brad. And
I would like to think, that they would be ready for that game, but Family Day can get to you. A lot of emotions going on that day. They talk about it, people getting emotional and just sometimes they get in their head and they don't play straight, and just that can happen sometimes.
Yeah, but we got the main reason I guess I feel so confident in that game is we have a lot of seniors on this football team. So I don't know. I have a really good
I feel like
Garrett
Greene would rather be scraped off that field than come off a field with.
Sure, they might even unveil green uniforms for that game, so we can all green that game out like they did Pat White's final game, and they wore white uniforms at home.
Hey, you never know. He deserves something special because, it's just that's one thing I was talking about the other day in a show that I did on YouTube was just how poetic would it be for us to have this special season in 2024? Because if you guys remember, Neil Brown's first commit ever when he got to West Virginia was Garrett Greene. So, it's only right that, his year after waiting his turn, finally his senior year, Neil Brown having the program where he wants it, those guys go out together with a bang there in his final season. So, hey, fingers crossed that it happens. But, as Brad said there, senior day can go one of two ways. You can be extremely motivated to get a win in your final game, but also, walking out with your family there at the beginning, definitely emotional. And sometimes it's kind of hard to flip that switch and then get in game mode. So you never know what could happen there on senior day. So not a bad pick there, Brad. I hope you're wrong, but not a bad pick. Which would then bring us, of course, to our final regular season game here. and West Virginia will end the regular season on the road for the second consecutive year. Last year was at Baylor and ended up being a tougher matchup than expected. Baylor's senior day, they really put up a fight there. So I'm sure the Texas Tech Red Raiders will be trying to do the same thing on November 30th here in 2024 when West Virginia heads out to Lubbock, their second furthest road trip of the year, now that they have to go to Arizona as well. So, never fun to make that trip to Lubbock. It's a far distance away, and West Virginia has struggled there in the past. So hopefully those struggles don't continue here this time. But Stephen, what are you thinking here as final regular season game of 2024?
I think at this point of the season, West Virginia is contending for a Big 12 championship. I think that they control their own destiny. If they win, then they are in the Big 12 championship game. I know that they're going on the road to play a pretty good Texas Tech team in Lubbock. Taj Brooks is going to be a force of nature, so to speak. He's undoubtedly the best running back in all of college football. But I don't think that's going to be enough to beat the Mountaineers. I think they go out there in Lubbock and they possibly even win another close game. There's going to be a bunch of close games on this schedule, but I think West Virginia goes down there and they pull it out and they finish the season 10-2, and they've got a chance to play in the Big 12 championship game.
Hey, beautiful. I love your line of thinking there, and I'm just going to follow you right up because I'm right there with you, man. I think that West Virginia, the way that I've got things playing out here, like you said, they're going to be motivated if they've got a chance to go to a Big 12 championship game with the win here. Obviously, going on the road is always tough in the Big 12 conference. Got a chance to be a close game, as you mentioned. Probably going to be a lot of close games this season because there's such parity in this conference, from top to, close to the bottom. Even a lot of these teams are still going to be pretty good. A lot of these teams have a lot of good weapons, and you don't really know how it's going to shake out. But we're confident in the Mountaineers. We think that we really have what this coaching staff has been building towards to this point, not only, with the pieces and the depth, but the chemistry as well is finally here more so than it's ever been for this coaching staff. And I think at this point is when you see that really pay off. You see guys really buy in together. You see them willing to battle for each other. And even if it is a close game there in Lubbock, but they know the Big 12 title's on the line, I think when it comes down to it, they're going to make the plays that they need at the end of that game to get the win. And there's no one that I'd rather have in clutch time than Garrett Greene. We've seen him get it done, last year. I think he's going to do it again this year. And I think West Virginia closes out the season with a win in Lubbock, and I've got them finishing the regular season with 10 wins as well, Stephen. Bradley, what about you? How are you feeling about this game against Texas Tech to close out the 2024 regular season?
Yeah, lots of same feelings, even though I have them coming off of a loss. They're looking at it like that it's a must-win game. They're disappointed that they just, maybe have let the Big 12 championship slip out of their grasp, and now that they know they have no other choice but to win, they even have a puncher's chance. And, Neil Brown gets them right, and they come into Texas Tech and they play some real mean, hard, nasty football. And I think that they get the win. I think that they show up and they power through to get that ninth win.
All right, I can dig that for sure. So at least we all have the season ending on a positive note. And, one thing that I always like to mention here in these season prediction roundtables is we don't discuss these beforehand. So we're all learning of each other's picks, as you guys are learning of it when you watch and listen to it. And that's one of the fun things about it is to see sometimes how similar our picks end up. All right, guys, Jordan tapping in right here to reveal the real final record predictions for each of us, as you'll hear revealed later in the episode. I not only miscounted Brad's conference record, but also miscounted Steven's. I would find out while I was editing this episode. So as you'll see in the graphic on the screen, if you're watching the video version, these are the real final record predictions for each of us that we came up with here after going through this game by game. Steven has the Mountaineers finishing at 10-2 overall, 8-1 in the Big 12 Conference. I have the Mountaineers at 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12 Conference. And then Brad has the Mountaineers at 9-3 and also 7-2 in the Big 12 Conference. So those are our final record predictions for WVU heading into the 2024 season here on the Season Prediction Roundtable episode. There's our record predictions for the Mountaineers here for the 2024 regular season. Now we're going to get into some even other predictions here that are sometimes even more fun depending on what you more enjoy. But we're going to talk, superlatives. We're going to talk who we predict to play in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. Where do we predict the Mountaineers to finish in that conference? So definitely some fun stuff to get into here. So let's lead it off with our Players of the Year predictions for 2024 for WVU. WVU Offensive Player of the Year for 2024. Steven, Who do you got here as the offensive player of the year for the Mountaineers when it's all said and done here, wrapping up the 2024 season?
I know that there is a lot of hype around the entire offense. I think that there's a few players that really could deserve to be called the player of the year at the end of it, but I really do believe that it's going to be Garrett Greene. I think Wyatt Milan might have a shot also, because he's as good as Zach Frazier was last year. I really truly believe the Wyatt Milan, even though he's playing another position, I think that he's going to fill that void in leadership, and in talent. And I believe the entire offensive line is going to be there. But I think that that's what's going to pave the way for Garrett Greene to be the offensive player of the year. He's just made strides in the way that his decision making is from everybody that talks about him, including all of the Mannings. If you haven't followed that, he was down at the Manning camp not too long ago, and he was one of the counselors there, and he showed out. Everybody that was there raved about how well he did. So that just makes me even more excited about him than I already was, and that's a large majority of the reason I wore his jersey on this show tonight. But I
And it's looking
think
good.
Garrett Greene's
It
going to do
is.
a lot of great things for West Virginia football this year, and yeah, I'm truly excited for the season he's going to have. I'm going with GG.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely, one of the most popular picks for sure if you're talking offensive player for the Mountaineers at the end of the year, because West Virginia is certainly going to go as he goes. And I think that he's the type of guy that the team rallies around. We saw that last year. He's got just that moxie, that intangible factor that, people will run through a wall for him. Hell, I'd run through a wall for him, and I'm not even on the team. So you can only imagine the guys in the locker room, how they feel about him. And I think he's going to be set for a year where he could really set himself up as an elite quarterback. So not a bad pick there. And, I almost went with that one myself. But you guys know me who my favorite player on the roster is. And I think that to me, he's going to be the offensive player of the year for the Mountaineers. Now that he's going to get to play, a full season of action. He's got the new jersey number. And with that, I say, number one in your program and number one in your hearts. I'm talking about Jaheim White. I think that he's going to be, for me, the WVU Offensive Player of the Year, but I think my even bolder prediction, I think Jaheim White's going to be the Big 12 Player of the Year in the conference this year, and I think he's going to be maybe even a bolder pick. I think he's going to be a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, given to the best running back in college football at the end of the season, despite the fact that he's only a sophomore. That's how much confidence I have in this guy. I think that he's the best running back we've had since Steve Slayton, Noel Devine days. I think he's that type of player. I think he's going to have a very special year. So for me, my offensive player of the year for the Mountaineers in 2024, I'm going with Jaheim White. Bradley, what do you got?
Yeah, hard to argue with all that on either one of those cases, because it's just two dynamic people. So yeah, player of the years. My heart's gonna say Garrett Greene. We live and die by Garrett Greene. I think Jaheim White is probably a better player, but Jaheim White is our best player. Garrett Greene is our most valuable player, without a doubt. Without him, everything else falls apart. I mean, not necessarily, because you got Nico Markiel, so I feel confident in the quarterback room, but really, I mean, the energy of the team right now lies in that young man's heart.
You're right.
The reason that I didn't go with Jaheim, or I didn't go with either running back per se, is because we have such talented running backs, both of them. Well, I mean, really, we've got more than just them too. Last year, Jaheim bursted onto the scene, and defenses weren't really, they didn't know about him yet. And I don't think that he's really going to take a step back this year. I just think that CJ is going to take a step forward. I think that they're going to share that workload. And I just don't. I don't know. I think they're both going to do so well that it's going to overshadow each other in ways, if that makes sense. And plus Garrett Greene and GG is going to, if any indication from what I've been hearing from Garrett Greene himself talk, he's going to let that thing fly this year, gentlemen. It's not going
Oh,
to
yeah.
be such a run heavy offense like we've seen in the past couple of years. You're going to see run a lot.
And what I was going to say, my brain was really kind of tinkling on Jaden Bray, because they've just been talking about him. They say he's different. They say that he's setting the standard there. And I'm curious to see what a guy of his size could actually do if they hit their full potential in Neil Brown's offense.
I think Jaden Bray's going to be one of those DQ Shorts types of players. He's going to be there when
I
you
could
need
see
him to
him.
be there. Very
Yeah,
clutch
Yeah.
style player. He's got
yeah,
great hands, has great leaping ability. But
So I think he's going
I
to be our
truly
touchdown
believe
machine. I think, or Robinson maybe. I don't know.
that our best receiver is still going to be Hudson Clement. I think Hudson Clement has the potential to be a David Steele style player, um, in the way that he can progress, especially with the strides he took his freshman year last year. I'm truly excited for Hudson this year,
yeah. I think our
even
wide
with the
receiver room is
additions.
loaded.
Yeah,
Quite
absolutely,
frankly,
absolutely loaded.
I
Yeah,
really do. And despite my man crush for Jaheim White being one of the reasons, my other reason of picking him was I kind of felt like you guys may go Garrett Greene, and I'm like, I can't have it be 3 for 3 Garrett Greene. Somebody else has to pick someone else. So I was like,
It's
smart
just
man,
real
I'm
hard.
going to
smart.
do Jaheim.
Dare to be different.
So
I like
got to be a little bit different. Got to have
it.
some variety in here. But speaking of variety, I think that we got a good chance of maybe having a little bit more when we flip it over to the other side of the football and we talk about the defensive player of the year in 2024 for the Mountaineers. Bradley, let's let you take this one first. Who do you got, when the season's all said and done, who do you think will be the defensive MVP for WVU in 2024?
Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably going to be maybe Big 12 newcomer of the year is Josiah Trotter.
Okay. I
Ooh,
like that.
I
I
I
like
think
like
he's
it.
that.
going to lead. I think he's going to lead from a point of dominance, and I think that he's just going to. I think he's going to come out onto the scene and be like, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my god, I can't get by this guy."
Yeah, I think he's going to be special. I got high hopes for him as well. I nearly pulled the trigger on that one as well, but you'll see him pop up here in a minute on one of my other superlatives. But spoiler alert. But I went a different way, and I was kind of thinking, should I go somewhere in the front seven? Should I go linebacker? Should I go D line? Had a couple of guys on my mind there, but ultimately I landed in the secondary. And I went with Aubrey Burks. I think Aubrey Burks is my defensive player of the year in 2024. I've been going back and rewatching some of the games from last year, for the members on the YouTube channel. I've been doing the rewatch commentaries. And the more I see of Aubrey Burks, a lot of his highlight plays were coming screaming downhill, forcing TFLs on, opponents' rushing game and stuff. So I think putting him at the spear position, getting him closer to the line of scrimmage is going to give him even more opportunities to make impacts there doing that. And I think he's really going to have his best season yet as a Mountaineer. And this is a guy that, going into last season, some national services were talking about him as one of the top safeties in the country. And I think playing at spear is going to even elevate him up to another level. So I think ultimately I landed on Aubrey Burks as my defensive player of the year in 2024. So like I kind of expected a little bit more variety already through this defensive side of picks. Steven, what about you though?
I like you. I started out in the up at the very front in the defensive line. I thought about picking Sean Martin. Really, my heart of hearts, I really wanted to go with Sean Martin. But if history proves anything, defensive ends aren't players of the year unless you're Bruce Irvin and you're really the only person on that defense making those plays. But I truly believe that we're going to have a very
Some
stout
playmakers,
defense.
yeah.
So after going throughout all of the defense and kind of evaluating my options, one of the there was only one that jumped out at me, and that was Aiden Garnes. I think that
Love that.
truly this kid is going to be a special type of talent from what I've seen on tape. My only true doubt that I had in the kid was that he played, I guess the talent that you play, at Duquesne. Uh, but my doubts quickly resolved whenever I watched West Virginia's game against them last year. I'd forgotten about some of the plays that defensive that had made against West Virginia, as well as West Virginia did in that game. I go back and I encourage you, if you haven't watched it, Aiden Garnes made, I think it was 3, maybe even 4 great defensive plays. Um, he's not only a ball hawk and can go after the ball. He's got great. He could very easily play wide receiver, but he's also great on the line of scrimmage and great at rushing the quarterback and getting back there and getting behind the line of scrimmage. So he's one that I am truly excited to watch play. I think he's going to do a great job. I think there's a few guys that's really going to help fill the void of losing Beanie Bishop to the NFL, but I think that he's going to be the one that really stands out and makes the majority of the plays. So I got to go with Aiden.
I like that pick.
I'm excited about a bunch of guys.
Same here. Same here. I think there's a ton of guys you could win with. got to give a shout out to Trey Lathan. He was one that I almost pulled the trigger on as well. I think him and Trotter's going to be awesome at the linebacker position, but I love the pick of Aiden Garnes there. I do agree with you. Ball hawk's a great term for him. I think he's going to be special. I really do. And the spring, seeing him not only in the scrimmage setting, but in some of the drills as well, really solidified that for me. But that brings us to now, we're going to talk about our breakout players. We're each going to give our top 3 breakout players. Can be on offense, can be on defense. I mean, can be on special teams even if you want it to be. But our description for a breakout player is really someone, maybe he played a little bit last year, but really didn't get a ton of action, and then really is going to burst on the scene this year, or maybe he's a newcomer that really going to make a ton of plays this year. So you guys led it off on the last one, so I'll lead it off here as far as breakout players. I'll give my top 3. One of them, I kind of teased a little bit when Brad gave his defensive player of the year. Josiah Trotter is going to be one for me. I think that guy is truly special. I mean, you just look at the way that he's built, and he looks nothing like a typical West Virginia linebacker. The guy looks like an NFL player already as a redshirt freshman. He's got that type of frame to him, so I think he's going to have a special season. So he's one of mine. Another one of mine, Steven just talked about a little bit, Aiden Garnes, going with him as well. The term Steven uses, ball hawk, is perfect for description of Aiden Garnes. I think that, what Beanie did last year was phenomenal. And I'm not saying Aiden Garnes is going to be a consensus All-American as well, but I think what Aiden Garnes is going to bring is something that Steven kind of teased as well, as the good hands. I think he's going to not only get the pass breakups, but I think a lot of times he gets his hand on the ball, he's going to intercept that thing. So I've got high hopes for Aiden Garnes. I think he can be a lockdown corner for us. Throwback term to some early days of the Country Roads webcast. But then lockdown corner.
Lockdown.
But then my third one is going to the offensive side for this one, Jaden Bray. You guys talked about him a little bit. He's got tremendous frame there. Some of the players have been calling him Optimus Prime because he's just a freak out there. 6'2", 210 pounds. And rewatching the game against Oklahoma State from last season, I had forgotten about how many plays he made for the Cowboys in that game, including catching a touchdown at Mountaineer Field. So the first time he catches a touchdown in Morgantown won't be his first time scoring there. It'll just be his first time scoring there as a Mountaineer. And if he hadn't got injured, he probably would have had a really special season for Oklahoma State last year. So I think he's got a chance to be maybe wide receiver number 1 for the Mountaineers this year. Going to make plenty of plays. So my 3 breakout players, Josiah Trotter, Aiden Garnes, and Jaden Bray. What about you, Brad? Who you got as your top 3 breakout players for the Mountaineers in 2024?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to go with, and I don't know if you would consider it a breakout, but I think that it's going to be somebody that is just going to become dominant, could take a dominant step in our defense. And I think that's Tyron Bradley. I think they started to kind of pop off a little bit at the end of last year, and I think at the beginning of this year, I think he's had like a season, and I don't know why, but I can just feel like the man's a freak on the inside, and so he's just like gone crazy all like summer, just think about how much better he can be, and I think that he's just going to come out and blow people's heads up. And I'm going to say for like the 3rd year in a row, at about week 3 or 4, you guys are going to see a guy named Dasani Redwood play, and
I like it.
he's going to make it. He's going to get his first sack. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's coming through. And then offense, I'm also going to say Jaden Bray. Like I said, they've been talking different of him. They say he just shows different on the field. He just like is that difference maker, setting the standard of what all the other wide receivers really need to be. And so, like I said, I think that we've got a chance to see some really special connections between him and Garrett Greene form once they get their connection going.
3 good picks there. I like those. Tyron Bradley, I like, that's bringing something to that used to be bandit position, now spur position this year. I think he's kind of the prototypical size that they haven't had there at that spot. He has the great athleticism, but he's 260 pounds. So I really like that one as well. I think he could break out for sure. So that's Bradley's 3. Steven, what about you? Your 3 breakout players for the Mountaineers this year?
I actually had 2 of them that were actually the same as yours, and Aiden Garnes and Jaden Bray. I think that those 2 are really going to come in and show out immediately. But the third one that I have is on the offensive side of the ball. I've got Rodney Gallagher. I think that kid is going to take some major strides this year. He's got great speed. I think that they use him in some of those jet sweep plays that we used to use Tavon in a lot, like they did a little bit last year. He almost broke a few of those plays last year. So I think that if they can get a couple of those going or get him in space over the middle, because he's going to be playing that slot position. So I look for Rodney to have a special season this year. And I'm telling you what, there's a lot of receivers we have that have potential to do that.
We really do.
I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse to have as good of a room that we have at wide receiver with so much talent, but I don't guess it's a bad thing.
Definitely don't hurt.
Hopefully, it's more of a
Yeah.
blessing. But I like that pick of Gallagher because I think, as you mentioned last year, they used him on some jet sweep screens and stuff. I think he's going to be more involved in the downfield passing this year. And with us losing E.J. Horton, who was kind of that guy that would come in to take the top off the defense, there's a few guys that can maybe fill that role. But, Gallagher is going to be near the top of that list of potentially being able to do that. So I like that pick a lot. And I think they're going to find different ways to get the ball in his hands this year. So good picks all around there, gentlemen, when we're talking breakout players. So that's kind of some superlative picks for us. Now let's talk a little bit about stats for the upcoming season, some of our stat predictions for the Mountaineers in 2024. Let's lead it off with passing yards. Obviously, we got high hopes for Garrett Greene. We've kind of discussed that here throughout the show. We think he's going to have a special senior season. Last year, Garrett Greene threw for 2,406 yards. Of course, he did miss, about a game and a half or so, give or take. And so my question for Garrett Greene this year is over or under 2,750 yards passing in 2024. Steven, let you take the floor first on this one. Is he going to be over or under 2,750 passing yards?
I'll give you the long answer. Yes. He'll be over. I think that he might even push 3,000 yards this year.
Okay.
Like I said, I think he's letting that thing fly this year, and with the amount of we just mentioned the talent in the wide receiver room. I really think that we're going to be explosive. So that might they might even go a little bit further than that.
It very well could. I like it though. I think that if he's having the season that we're hoping to have, we may need him to do just that, especially with teams probably loading the box on us sometimes. But Brad, what about you? You think he's going to get over that 2,750 mark?
Yeah, over. I think he said a goal of like 3,000 for himself, so I think that's what he's going to hit.
I like it. I like it, gentlemen. And I think for me, the caveat here is kind of what we were talking about there, the wide receiver room. A lot of talent, a lot of potential. It's just a matter of if they're going to take that next step, if they're going to be able to do kind of what Neil Brown talked about in his opening press conference of fall camp. He said the way the team's game plan them last year was load the box, single up the receivers one-on-one, and make them beat you through the air. And I think this year, hopefully with those receivers taking the next step, they're going to be able to do that. And if people do try and cover us man-to-man and load the box, we should be able to make them pay. So I'm going to go with you guys. I'm going to take the over as well. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not as optimistic, but I don't know if we'll hit the 3,000 quite yet. I think maybe that's just because I'm a little bit higher on, the run game. I think we're still going to have a chance to have maybe the best rushing offense in power conference football again here in 2024, like we did in 2023 when we led all Power 5. So I think that maybe because of that, I have it a little bit lower. I think it'll be right around 2,800 or so, but I've got the over as well. I think he's going to improve that passing yards total. So we're all going over 2,750 yards passing for Garrett Greene in 2024. Which then brings us to, the other part of the backfield that I was kind of talking about there, the rushing attack. We've all talked about Garrett Greene running the football last year, C.J. Donaldson running the football last year, and of course, Jaheim White really bursting onto the scene at the end of last year, all three of which had over 700 yards rushing. But because, your backfield's so diverse, you're kind of splitting up the carries, you didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. So the question now is, does that change in 2024? Will West Virginia have a 1,000-yard rusher? And if you say yes, who do you think it'll be? Bradley, let you take this one.
No, I don't think we do. I think that it's just too many hands, too many touches. But I do think that the split's going to be a lot different this year. I think it's going to be like 900 yards for Jaheim, probably a little less than that for C.J. Donaldson, and then I think Garrett Greene's going to be down at like 600. I know he's going to try to put a lot in his hands, but I don't think he's going to have to run it as much this year. So I think that we're going to see his number drop off quite a bit.
Yeah, if he's throwing it more and stuff, you may see that happen for sure. Steven, what about you?
Yeah, I actually kind of echo a lot of what Bradley thinks. I think that Gigi's numbers rushing the ball are going to fall off a little bit, but that's only because he's going to be opening up in the passing game a little bit more. He's not going to have to be forced to throw it. I think CJ is going to be more used on third downs and in the red zone situations around the goal line. But I actually do think that Jaheim gets over 1,000 yards. this year. So yeah, I do think West Virginia has a 1,000-yard rusher in Jaheim White this season.
Hey, took the words right out of my mouth, friend. I think so as well. Jaheim's going to get over 1,000 this year, in my opinion. I mean, 842, and he didn't really start playing until 6th or 7th game of the season extensively. So he did that damage in 5 or 6 games really. So full season under his belt, whole season to game plan, different ways to get him the football as well. I think Jaheim White does have 1,000 yards rushing, and maybe kind of to go with what Brad said. GG's yards do drop a little bit because he's throwing a little bit more, but I think Jaheim picks up that slack and gets over that 1,000-yard mark, and CJ still maybe 600 or 700 of his own. But if we're going with my prediction from earlier, if he's going to have the Big 12 Player of the Year type of season, he's going to have over that 1,000-yard rushing mark. So I'm going with Jaheim to get over 1,000. And we're going to stick in the backfield here for our next stat pick. Who will lead WVU in rushing touchdowns in 2024? A little bit more interesting one to try and call here. You look back at last season, Garrett Greene actually led the team in rushing touchdowns. He had 13. CJ not far behind with 11, and Jaheim White finished the year with 4. But like we said, only got in there in the latter portion of the season. So does Garrett Greene repeat it, or who leads the Mountaineers in rushing touchdowns this upcoming season? Who do you got, Steven?
Actually, kind of just precursed it a minute ago. I think CJ is going to be our back around the red zone situation. So I think CJ is going to be our leading rushing touchdown scorer, however you want to put it. He's going to lead us in rushing touchdowns.
Listen, get out of my head. Get out of my head, man. We're thinking too much alike right now because I've got the same thing. I've got CJ as well. Like you said, get down near the goal line, get in the red zone, bring in the big back, let him power some of those in. And also, kind of goes hand in hand with what we've been talking about GG, trying to let him throw the ball a little bit more and, try and save his body a little bit. I think you put a little bit more load on your running backs this year. So I think Jaheim will increase his total, but I still think CJ is going to be the touchdown leader as far as rushing touchdowns. So I'm going with CJ. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a copy and paste. I think it's going to be Garrett Greene, CJ, and then Jaheim. But I think that it's going to be significantly more touchdowns probably for everybody. I'd say probably at least like 2 or 3 or 4 more touchdowns. I think that it's just going to be how we're punching the ball in.
Yeah, because if you look back last year, the first about 4.5 or so games of the season, we hadn't really found our explosiveness yet on offense. I think it's going to be there from the get-go this year, so definitely probably will be more touchdowns to go around. That's a good call there. Now we've talked a good bit about the receivers and having some depth in that room, a lot of talent in that room. But now let's get into the nitty-gritty and talk about some leaders in that room stat-wise. Let's start it off talking about receiving yards and who will lead WVU in receiving yards in 2024. Last year, Devin Carter was the leader with 501 yards in that room. I'll kick it off first this time since you guys took the last few. I think the leader in receiving yards is going to be Hudson Clement. I think, we talked about Huddy Tuddy earlier, probably going to have a breakout year where he's hopefully healthy the whole year.
I want you to
playing
send me your
year
notes,
well.
okay, sir?
Hey, man, we're on the same wavelength right now, apparently. But I think last year, Hudson really made a lot of plays downfield. At one point, he was leading the nation in yards per receptions. So I think he's going to make plays downfield again. That's going to lead to a high yardage total. I'm going with Hudson. Steven, sounds like you are as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead. I gave it away. I got Hudson Clement. I think he's going to have a breakout season, even more than what he did last year. I think I'm really, really high up on Huddy Tuddy, you guys. I think he's going to have a heck of a season. So, yeah, I think it's going to be Huddy Tuddy.
It's like we're taking a test back in school and we're just both looking over the shoulder a little bit. Bradley, what about you, though?
Yeah, you guys are sleeping on my man Traylon Ray over here. I think that people are going to be focusing on Jalen Bray, and I think that Traylon Ray is going to be feasting because of that.
That's not a bad pick at all.
Not a bad pick. I actually had him on my breakout player list as I was deciding between them earlier, like Traylon Ray.
Yeah, I think they're both going to be very good because they both got that experience last year. And now they got a chance to take that next step. And I think it really just kind of comes down to who's the defense putting their best corner on, because then it's going to free up the other one. And like we talked about earlier, with the depth we have in the receiver room, we just have too many weapons for people to be able to cover all of these guys. And we haven't even talked a ton about Cole Taylor, but we're going to do that right now, I think, because last year Cole Taylor led West Virginia in receptions with 35. I think he was the first tight end in like 40 years to lead WVU in receptions. So, he had a special season already. And so now we're going to talk about who's going to lead WVU in receptions in 2024. Does Cole Taylor find a way to repeat that performance, lead WVU in receptions again, or does he pass that baton to someone else? Bradley, who do you got as the receptions leader for the Mountaineers in 2024?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Cole Taylor again, or at least I hope not.
I know it.
It's
I
just
think we
like
know what you mean. I think we know what you mean.
I hope that it's Jalen Bray. I hope it's somebody that is getting a little bit deeper in the field and get a little bit more open, and a first option, not a dump down option. So
I'm kind of thinking along the same lines as you there in multiple ways because I don't think it'll be Cole Taylor either. One of the reasons is I think Cole Taylor is going to be kind of a guy that opposing defenses circle a lot, so he may not have as many opportunities as he did last year. Kind of burst on the scene a little bit, and really he was kind of the go-to guy in a lot of games, and people didn't pick up on that until later in the year. This time they're going to know about him from the beginning, so I think that he may still haul in 30 some catches again, but I think that we're going to have a lot of other weapons that maybe do the same. But I'm right there with you, Brad. I went with Jaden Bray as well. I think he leads the Mountaineers in receptions in 2024. Steven, what about you?
I'm also going with Jaden Bray. But
Hey, 3 for 3.
3 for 3. But I just to echo what you guys saying about Cole Taylor, I know what you mean. You don't want a guy like Cole Taylor to have to be your leading receiver because that means that your receivers aren't living up to par. I think that was the reason that he was our leading, led us in receptions last year was because, we had so many dropped catches between all of our other receivers, and we just could not find that chemistry until later on in the season when we started to really, I think it was that third game whenever GG finally came back, we finally started to hit that stride on offense. But before that, that's the only real viable option that you could count on was Cole Taylor. So I really I know what you mean by that. You don't want that to have to be the case.
I think he's going to make some big catches.
Oh, absolutely. He's still going to be there for you when you need him to be.
Might lead us
It's
in
not a knock on
touchdown
him at
catches.
all, at all. Like you just, you want to have more options than just Cole Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing that we seem like we will this year as well. And I also like the fact that we're all high on Jaden Bray. But somebody that deserves a mention, just because we haven't talked about him a ton, is Justin Robinson coming over from Mississippi State
Absolutely.
as well.
Yep.
He's going to be a good player, good size, 6'4", and good speed. But I just think Jaden Bray is going to kind of be more the go-to. We'll see what happens. But I think, like we said, good problem to have with all these talented receivers and all this potential in that room. So excited about the offense for sure. And that's kind of our stat predictions there on that side. Now we got few here to talk about on the defensive side. We're going to flip it over there, make a couple predictions for that side. Let's start it off with the leading tackler in 2024 for the Mountaineers. I'll go ahead and lead this one off because I think I kind of teed it up a little bit earlier. I teased it. I think Josiah Trotter does it, man. I think that there's a lot of guys that are going to rack up tackles. I think Aubrey Burks might be near this list. Almost went with him because I think playing that Spear, he's going to rack up a ton of tackles if he can stay healthy for the entire season. But something about Trotter, man, that guy's just special. I think he would have started last year as a true freshman if he didn't have the injury. But now as a redshirt freshman, a year in the program, going to get that starting role. Him and Lathan at linebacker together, to me, that's just scary. Both those guys are going to make a ton of plays, but I really like Josiah Trotter. I think he's going to lead the Mountaineers in tackles despite being a redshirt freshman. So that's who I got. Steven, what about you?
To me, I like the Josiah Trotter pick, and he has a really good chance of doing it. But to me, this one was a no brainer. I think for every year other than 2019 in the Neil Brown era, the leading tackler has been the middle linebacker. It was Josh Chandler, then it was Tony Fields, or it was I can't remember which one was first, which one was second. But it was those two,
I think that's
and
right.
then you got Lee Koba, leading tackles for 2 years in a row. So to me, it was just like, well, look who's going to be playing over the middle right there, and you got your who your leading tackler is going to be. And I think that if Trey Lathan stays healthy and he's going to be playing that middle linebacker position, I think Trey's got a strong chance of being the leading tackler this year.
That's a great point. I like your strategy and going with that one as well. And it's probably more likely than mine, but I just love Trotter, man. And that's kind of like the man crush I have
It's
on Jaheim
no,
White
no,
on
no.
offense, have it on Trotter on defense. So I was like, I'm going to go out on a limb. So I
I
went out
like
on a
that
limb a
pick
little
too.
bit with that one.
I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't show Josiah a little bit more, love in my predictions here. I didn't have Josiah on any of my lists. So So y'all might be saving my face here.
He'll be on yours at the end of the season or something. Maybe we'll,
No doubt.
once he
No
gets it
doubt.
done for sure. Because that's the one thing about him is it's all on potential. Whereas Trey Lathan, it was only 4 games, but we saw what he can do. And of course, as you mentioned, the history of the middle linebackers leading us in tackle. So good pick there, Bradley. What about you, leading tackler for the Mountaineers in 24?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Josiah Trotter too. I think that you just like hearing Noah Brown talk about him the other day. It's just like not something you hear about many players. He said he doesn't have to worry about him being ready. He just knows that he is, and like that's not something you can say about a lot of people his age. So if Noah Brown's got that kind of trust in him, then I know he's going to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. Is he supposed to be there? So
Yeah, he's got that pedigree and he's got that ability. So I think that the fact that we all picked, one of our 2 linebackers shows just what confidence we have in that unit for the upcoming season. And I think it's going to really take a step up. And that's not a knock on Lee Cobe or anything, but I think that just Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan more fit what these guys want to do on defense. And they both have great size and great athleticism to go with that size. So I think we're really going to be in for a treat with this linebacking core in 2024. Having said that, let's talk a little bit about the leader in sacks for the upcoming season. West Virginia, I think quietly kind of went unnoticed that they led the Big 12 in sacks last season, actually. West Virginia had a really deep defensive line that played a part in that. West Virginia was able to get a lot of those sacks without really sending blitzes, usually only rushing, 3 or 4 guys, and we're still able to get home. So that shows the talent of that defensive line, and a lot of those guys are back. So there's a lot of good candidates here, both on, the defensive line and the linebacking core here to lead West Virginia in sacks in 2024. Bradley, who did you go with here to do that for the Mountaineers?
yeah, see, I think this is where Trey Lathan shows up. I think that he showed expert ball rushing skills. I think that he was really good on the blitz. And I think that, there's going to be so much pressure coming from other places in the defense that he's going to get lost. And he's got the kind of quickness to close that gap at a blink of an eye.
Yeah, good pick. Good pick. I like that one. Steven, what do you got here for the sack leader for the Mountaineers this year?
I've got Trey Lathan as well. I think that he's going to have he's going to continue what he was on track to do last season, and I think that he's going to be able to fill that gap there in the middle, and he's going to get back there a lot this year, and not just sacks but tackles for loss as well. I think he's going to be in the mix a bunch.
Yeah, he's going to be a monster there in both those categories, I think, as well. I think last year he ended up like top 5 in the Big 12 in QB hits, despite the fact that he only played like 4 games. So that right there shows you that he's got a case to make here for this one. But I went out on a little bit of a limb here, and it's someone that we haven't even talked about really throughout this whole show because he's probably not going to be necessarily a starter. But when you go look at what he did at Gardner-Webb, Ty French really made a big impact there, sacking the quarterback and getting TFLs. That was kind of his specialty. And I think that West Virginia is going to use him in that capacity this year. We talked about Tyron Bradley. He's going to be the starter there at Spur. He's going to get most of the reps. But I think when it's an obvious passing situation, you're going to see Ty French come in a sub package, and they're going to use him similar to the way West Virginia used Bruce Irvin his first year in from junior college, where he just kind of came in on passing downs and wreaked havoc. And I think Ty French has a great chance to do that. You look at Gardner-Webb, every year that he was there, he had at least 14 tackles for a loss every single year. So I think that he's going to do that again here at WVU, moving up to the next level. And I think he's going to have a chance to be a pass rushing specialist. So while I think Trey Lathan's probably a better pick, I just tried to go with something a little bit out of left field. And I think Ty French is going to make some plays. And, he may not end up the leader, but I think he's going to be near the top. So I'm going to go ahead and say that maybe he does. He's my prediction for the leader in sacks in 2024.
I think another person that deserves mention that I think that might potentially make waves this year is Reed Carrico, Carrico. Yeah. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Coming in from Ohio State, I think that he has potential to be, a hard-nosed player right there in the middle, along with Trey Lathan and those guys.
A lot of depth at linebacker, kind of similar to what we were talking about at receiver. Good depth at linebacker this year.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and then last stat pick we have here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Big 12 standings here to wrap up the show. Hope you guys have enjoyed the 2024 season prediction roundtable. It's been really fun to go through this. Always one of our favorite episodes. Hope it's one of your alls as well. And want to remind you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the thumbs up, give us a like on the video, share your record prediction in the comments if you'd like, or any of these picks you have as far as stats is concerned. We always appreciate those interactions. And of course, subscribe to us here on YouTube. And if you are on the audio side, subscribe to us there on any podcast platform you like. Leave a 5-star rating for the show. That helps us a lot on that side as well. And we appreciate the folks over at WVSportsNow.com for hosting our show on their site as well. Having said that, final defensive stat pick, guys, is the interception leader for the Mountaineers in 2024. We talked a little bit earlier about all the defensive backs that we brought in, plus some returning. We got high hopes for the secondary for this upcoming season, but who's going to make the most plays there? Who leads the Mountaineers in interceptions in 2024? What do you got, Brad?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Aiden Garnes. I think that he's got a chance to really step up and be a difference maker in the backfield, and I think he's going to be tested the most. So I think he's going to have the most opportunity.
Right there with you. Same here, Aiden Garnes. I think that he showed me something in the spring. We were talking about him a little bit being a ball hawk, and just watching him, throughout the drills they were running in the spring, and then hearing what they've been saying about him. I know Garnett Hollis coming over from Northwestern is going to be probably the other starting corner on the other side of Aiden Garnes. But I think, it could be an issue where people try and stay away from him like you're talking about, Brad, and so maybe Garnes gets targeted more, and I think he's going to make plays on those balls when he is targeted. But I think either way you spin it, West Virginia has some really good cornerbacks for the upcoming season, and the most important part is more depth. But I think Aiden Garnes is just going to have sticky hands and get the interceptions for the Mountaineers this year. Steven, what about you?
I've got the same player. I think that he's going to have a truly special season. Like I said, Defensive Player of the Year for WVU and potentially Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 Conference. I think that he's going to, be talked about a lot at the end of this season. So I'm really high up on Aiden Garnes from what I've seen, not only in the spring game that we went up there and watched, but if you go back and you watch some of his highlights, I mean, this kid, he's a special type of player. He not only has great hands, he's got great leaping ability. He knows how to time the snap of the football. It seems like very, very well, and he's got great speed. So there's a lot of intangibles that I'm really, really excited to watch in that player. I'm really excited to watch Aiden play.
Hey, I love it. Love that we're all in agreement on that one there. Aiden Garnes hopefully set for a special season in the Mountaineers defensive backfield, but we also all feel like West Virginia themselves is set for a pretty special season in 2024, which brings us to our final two things to talk about here. To lead it off here, we're going to talk about West Virginia's finish in the Big 12 standings. Bradley, where do you have West Virginia finishing here when 2024 is all wrapped up as far as the Big 12 Conference is concerned? Where do you think the Mountaineers will finish placed at?
Yeah, so ending the season 9-3. I think it was 9-2 in Big 12 or
9-3, 6-3 in conference.
It should be 6-2 because I only had us losing to Penn State and then losing to 2 in the Big 12. So it should be.
You got Penn State, Oklahoma State, and UCF. Yep, you're right. So 7-2 actually
7-2.
for you as well.
Yeah, so I think that's good enough to get us in the top 4. I don't know if that has us playing in the Big 12 championship. I don't know. I think it's going to be a real competitive year in the Big 12. And so I think that even having 2 losses, I think that we're going to be looking for Oklahoma State to lose, and we got a chance to be in it. So I'm going to say in the top 4 somewhere.
I like that. I think that that's kind of the threshold for me. I think if you want to get to that Big 12 title game, you probably can't lose more than 2 conference games. But, I mean, it could get crazy, and you might be able to sneak in there with 3. But I think, that 2 losses in conference will kind of have you there. So, I'm right there with you. I guess we all did agree on the Big 12 conference record then. I apologize for the earlier misspoken where I had Brad at 6-3. I wrote that down wrong. But
sorry about him, Brad. I'm sorry about him, Brad.
Yeah. Well, I can't do math. I can't count. I went to Bluefield. But no, I'm just kidding. But it is nice to see that we all have the same conference record at least. But I'm right there in agreement with you. I think with a record of 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12 conference, I've got the Mountaineers finishing second in the conference, sneaking in to the Big 12 championship game. Steven, what about you? What do you think? What WVU finishes in the Big 12 standings?
I'm going to let you just go ahead and just tell the rest of my stuff because we know it already.
I mean, yeah, I told you we were cheating off each other's paper.
10-2 on a 7-game winning streak to end the season for West Virginia. I've got them finishing second in the Big 12 Conference to the only team that they lost to in the Big 12 Conference. the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think that's who finishes first and wins the regular season title at least.
Which brings us to our final little prediction here is which two teams play in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. Steven, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. Is that what you got?
Oklahoma State, West Virginia. You want me to go ahead and give my prediction for that game?
Yeah, let me know what you think.
Do you know how hard it is for two teams to play each other twice in a regular season and for the outcome to be the same?
That's true.
Oftentimes not likely. And I think West Virginia comes out on top and wins the Big 12 championship this year and gets a spot in the playoff. Now, I don't know if that means that we get a first round bye. Is it an instant bye if we win the Big 12 championship game?
The conference champion for the power conferences does. So we would be one of the top 4 seeds.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would love if that happens, but the first round of the playoff, the non-bye round, like the very first round of the playoff, is on campus.
On campus, yep.
And man, that would be the only reason that I would want a game in that round is because if an on-campus playoff matchup, could you imagine how lit Morgantown would be?
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh man.
I think that's the positive side of kind of where we have the records predicted is that if West Virginia does go, 10-2, 7-2, and gets to the Big 12 championship game, and even if they lose that game, they still have a chance of getting in as at large, I think, with 10 regular season wins. So you never know.
Yeah.
See, not really in mind with losing to Penn State, like you just don't have a chance. Like with 3 losses, like you don't win the Big 12 championship, you're probably not in.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, with all my, cats out of the bag now with all my predictions, I think that Penn State game, losing that game in the beginning of the season, as much as I want to win that game, like you say, Cruz, I think winning that game only sets you up to be in the top 10 midway through the season to only fall because of the hype that you're under at that point in the year. So I think us losing that game and us losing the Oklahoma State game early on in the year instead of later in the year, I think that only bodes well for West Virginia, towards the later part of the season and down the stretch when you really, really need to have your confidence in the complete unity of your team, I guess, because West Virginia really struggles a lot to play all phases of the game together in one game a lot. And I don't think that that's going to be an issue this year. I'm excited about this team the same way that I was excited about the team in 06. And I can't say that I felt that strongly about a team since.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most anticipated seasons.
About the depth, about the sacrifices from Neil Brown, taking a $400,000 pay cut to pay his assistant coaches, so we don't lose our assistant coaches. We keep all the same schemes. We keep all of our key players.
Being on a lava seat, like you cooled down an absolute scorcher seat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this time last year, how crazy is that we were talking about? Neil Brown might not make it to the end of the season, and now look how we're
complete turnaround.
But I mean, like you listen to every person in that locker room whenever they're in interviews and they go on, 3 guys or go on Sportsline and they're talking about it. Every guy believes that they can contend for the Big 12 championship. And it's not the same way as it was whenever like, oh, we're going to prove that we're not 14th. Like there's a calmness about it. You know what I mean? And to me, I don't know. It might be because I'm biased, but to me, I'm like, how there are so many people overlooking a team like West Virginia, especially when you are talking about some of the teams that you have placed over them. I get why some people want to put Colorado on some type of a pedestal, but when you actually look at reality, that's it's a fantasy that people are living whenever they put a lot of these teams above a team like West Virginia, who returns so much and keeps the same, all the things I just mentioned. I mean, I guess we like being in this position, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that give me a lot of confidence in this season, and it's baffling that other people aren't on that train.
Yeah. Well, it's why they said trust the climb. This is what they were truly climbing towards, I believe, is to get to the point that they're about to be at now. I think they have everything finally the way that they want it. It's a good, complete team, the most complete team we've had in a long time. And, with saying that, I'm going to go ahead and throw these gold and blue colored glasses back on because I got to book in the show with them. I put them on for that Penn State prediction. I got to put them on here for my Big 12 Conference Championship game prediction because I, like Steven, have the Mountaineers played in the Big 12 Championship game as well. But I've got the opponent a little bit different. I've got us facing the Kansas State Wildcats. I had us beating Kansas State in the regular season, but I think that'll be only one or two losses in the conference that Kansas State suffers as well. I think they're going to be a really good team, and I've got Kansas State versus WVU in the Big 12 Conference Championship. So golden blue glasses on, gentlemen, because I think we're set for a special season, and I'm looking at it very optimistically. So that's what I've got there as far as the Big 12 Championship game prediction. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, I say that feels about on par. Like I think that we get in with a 7-2 record. I think that we're in the Big 12 championship. Hopefully, it shakes out for us that way. I say, I think that, like I said, I think we're gonna have multiple lost teams. It's really gonna come down to who you beat. Yeah, I like the Kansas State pick. I think that getting that double matchup. I think it's gonna be somebody. Actually, no, give me. I don't even know if we can play Utah. I don't know how any of these things could shake out, honestly. I couldn't tell you if there's like one team we're more likely to play again twice, team we didn't play. Couldn't tell you. Give me Utah. Give me Utah in the Big 12 championship and let us clean them up a little bit and then on to the bye week, I guess.
I'm gonna tell you something, Brad. I like your pick, but I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell you the same thing that I told Cruz. Utah couldn't win the current Pac-12 conference. Okay.
Steven's not high on Utah.
I'm not high on Utah. I don't believe in them. I don't know if it's these sites that I'm on that I hear all these fans chirping about. I feel the same way about them as I do Arizona. I hear a lot of them fans. BYU fans, they're great. I like BYU fans. They're real nice. They're real respectful. And I don't know. I guess if I'm picking a side in the holy war, I'm probably going with the Mormons. I hate to say it. I'm going with the Mormons. I got to go BYU. I never thought that I'd pick any side in that, but with the way that everybody,
Jordan's like, Steven's like, if they gotta have my opinion, this is it.
If they forcing it out of me,
just so you guys know which side I lay on is.
I'll tell you one thing: those BYU fans, they came in carried away. Can we talk about that for a second? Since we're not playing BYU this year, they're not going to have a dog in the fight. I'm sorry to say, you're not going to be good at football. But we can talk about how good your fans are. Like, you came in carrying our flag. Every BYU fan that I encountered whenever they came to Morgantown smiled and waved at us. It was the most respectful bunch. But I'll tell you what, these Utah fans.
I don't think you'll get that with Utah fans.
No. These Utah fans, they come into the conference. This is our shit. We run this. Y'all don't even know football. Y'all don't even know football. We come from the Pac-12 conference. I'm like, what
Pac-12?
Y'all gonna learn today. Y'all gonna learn
today. Yeah, I think they're gonna have a wake-up call this year. I think somewhere in the 5 to 6 range for Utah.
Well, I'm saying it's going to be on a December day in Dallas, or Vegas, wherever it's at now.
Either way it pans out, whether it's Steven's prediction of them being having a bad loss or us playing them and beating them in the Big 12 championship game, I'm cool with either one because I'd love to humble them one way or the other.
Yeah, no doubt. If it does end up being that way, I do hope West Virginia gets to humble them out there.
The only thing that worries me about this season is that the way the conference is currently set up, 16 teams, so not everyone gets to play everyone like we used to, but there's no division. So it's just the top 2 teams make the conference championship game, which could lead to some dicey scenarios at the end of the year. Because if we end up, up there and it's a coin flip to see who the second ranked team is to get in the conference championship and we get held out because of some crazy tiebreaker, nothing would hurt me more. So I just hope it doesn't come down to something like that if West Virginia does have the special season that we're thinking they can have.
Hopefully, if it does come down to a situation like that, hopefully West Virginia's still looking at an at-large playoff bid. If that's the case, because you're not really controlling your own destiny at that point. You don't really have another game on your resume to potentially have a loss on. So I don't know. Maybe it could shake up positively.
That could be the silver lining for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, gentlemen. That pretty much wraps us up. Season 7 is now underway of the show here, getting ready set for this special 2024 season as we're all feeling pretty good about it, as you guys have heard here in our season prediction roundtable. This episode's always a bit more lengthy, but I think that you guys always typically tend to enjoy it because we go through the whole schedule and then we make some stat predictions and stuff as well. So we've had a lot of fun crafting and I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to it or watching it, whichever way that you've chosen to take this episode in. We really appreciate you guys, but that's pretty much all I've got. You guys got any final thoughts here to wrap up episode 189 here of the CRW podcast?
No, I think like you said, the season's officially underway. I think the other day we got a UPS package in the mail, for the season tickets, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
always when the realism sets in for myself. I spend a large portion of the year, even during the spring game, it's it. I always spend a large portion of the year like, gosh, man, like it just never feels like football season is going to come back, and then like it's about this point of the year where I'm like, oh my, it's real, it's almost here. Like even though you only got there's probably a large portion of our listening audience that also likes NFL football. I like NFL football, but it's it doesn't quite grab my heart quite as strong as
no.
college football does, or especially as much as WVU football does. So we've only got about what from the time we're recording this about 4 weeks, a little less than 4 weeks left from kickoff. So getting really really excited.
I am too, man. I'm right there with you, man. There's nothing like WVU football season. Wait all year for it. Seems like it's never going to get here, and then unfortunately, it'll go by too fast. But we're going to enjoy covering it as it does go on, and think there's going to be a ton of fun stuff to talk about it throughout what can be and hopefully will be a special 2024 season. Bradley, anything else you got before we wrap up?
No, I think I just got one little fun question that we can have a quick answer on. Do you guys think that this is looking at like the next couple of years? Do you think that this year is Neil Brown's best chance to really kind of do the damn thing?
Yes.
Like this team just kind of
Uh,
feels special. Like it's going to be hard to like recreate
What?
this
Well,
kind of
hold on,
like
hold on.
energy that you would have even
What do
like
you?
with Nico Marchiol and a really good team next year. It's going to be hard to manufacture this kind of energy that you just have naturally right now with the quarterback like Garrett Greene.
What do you mean by doing the damn thing though? Like, do you mean like taking it all the way and
Yeah, like
and
really having a chance
winning
at a
it?
run at it. Yeah.
I don't know if okay. So I think that we have a legitimate shot at the playoff. I'm going to go ahead and I'm sorry, Cruz, to cut you off, but
no, you're good, man.
I don't know if this year's team is the team that takes it all the way to that. I I, I don't see that, but I do think that what this team could potentially do is set you up on a run. Um, you know, if you get to a playoff spot potentially, that puts your guys in position to experience that. So then you get, a great talented quarterback in Nico Marchiol filling the void next year whenever Garrett Greene hopefully goes on to the NFL to take on that career. And I think you're going to have a lot of guys with a lot of great experience to fill those voids next year. So I don't think that they have enough in the tank to win a national championship this year. No, but I do think that what they could do, and what I really truly believe they'd have a lot of potential to do, is set up, some special years here in the next 2 to 3 years.
I kind of feel the same. My bold take is that we're about to be on a run from here through the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. That's gonna, I don't know if it'll match. I don't know if it'll exceed it. But I think that it's going to be similar to 2005 to through 2007, because I think you look back, 2004, that year they won 8 or 9 games, really kind of laid the foundation for then what became a special run from '05 to '07. I think if you look at last year, get the 9 wins, that was kind of the start of it. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we're about to see. And I think that we're about to be on a special run here of West Virginia football. Personally, that's my bold take. So I'm kind of right there with you, Stephen.
I think my difference maker. I think you said you didn't know if it would match it. My difference maker, and the reason that I believe that it's not only going to match it, but probably potentially exceed what we
It
did.
could.
I think that it will, and the reason that I think so is because the difference maker to me, um, a lot of people could. I'll mention names. A lot of people like to say that Rich Rodriguez caught lightning in a bottle with Pat and Steve, and that might be true, but someone had to recruit him there to get him there to play that football. So that credit has to
Yeah.
be due to Rich Rodriguez. Then you can say what you will about the man, you can hate him, you can love him. He was responsible for what happened in that era of WVU football. The difference between Neil Brown and a guy like Rich Rodriguez is Rich begged and begged and begged for more money over his tenure of coaching, while he also begged and begged and begged for more money for his coaching staff, while not really truly willing to give up one side or the other. Neil Brown just took a $400,000 pay cut to pay his assistant coaches, and you don't really see anybody jumping ship or really wanting to. Chad Scott talks about his family moving here and how they love being here and throwing crawfish boils. Jordan Leslie I hear him talk about how much he loves Cheat Lake and, going and spending time on Cheat Lake and how his family loves being here. It's that kind of culture that gives me a lot of confidence in what they're truly building up there, because, there's a lot of similarities early on in the tenure of Neil Brown and Rich Rodriguez. Not really from the way that the program was handed down to each of them, but with the way that the seasons were. You really didn't have a lot of success early on. You have a season like West Virginia had last year with 9 wins. Very, very reminiscent of the way the West Virginia season was in 2003 when you came out of the gate. No one expected you to do anything, and then you came out and you rattle off 8 wins to end the season. You get into a bowl game, and then the rest is history with what you had in Rasheed Marshall, Chris Henry, feeding into the Pat White and Steve Slayton era. I think that's what killed that era was Rich Rodriguez leaving. That's no secret to you guys or anybody else
Right.
in this fan base. I don't see that being the case with Neil Brown. I mean, I just truly don't see that being the case. I think if anything, he's only proved that he wants to be here and he loves being the head coach at this university. So I think, and especially if he gets on a run, I think that this could truly be a special type of position that West Virginia could put themselves in the next decade. I've mentioned that several times with the way the new Big 12 looks. I think that West Virginia could potentially be in a spot to become a blue blood of college football, or at least of the Big 12 conference within the next decade of football.
Yeah, they're in a good position to take it over for sure. I think so as well. Brad, you got any other thoughts there on that?
That's just my question. I think that's a good way to cover it.
So that's it. We're thinking not only a special season here in 2024, but a special season that could start a special run for the Mountaineers moving forward. So definitely something to look forward to, and we appreciate you guys here as we continue to cover it throughout the 2024 season. We'll have the Penn State preview and predictions episode up in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to that game. So anything else that comes out before then, you can stay tuned to our YouTube channel, Country Roads Webcast. We'll put out some videos there on any breaking news as we move through fall camp rather, and look forward to this 2024 season in all its glory as we have it here predicted on the show. Appreciate you guys tuning in this one. And one last reminder, be sure head over to magicmind.com/countryroadslt. Get you a one-time purchase or get you a subscription of Magic Mind. You won't regret it. Just use our special code countryroadslt. Get you 48% off your first-time purchase or 20% off your subscription. But having said that, for my co-host Steven and Bradley, I'm Jordan Cruz, and as always, until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those